Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahushai, Ba'ashim Rakah Kodash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you Akim out there pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Raya with another video, and I'm going to start it off in 2nd Esdras chapter 9. He answered me then and said, Measure thou the time diligently in itself, and when thou seest part of the signs past, which I have told thee before, then shalt thou understand that it is the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world which he made. We're living in the last seconds of these last days, and how we're measuring the time diligently is reading these scriptures, as well as watching the news and filtering the news through the scriptures to see that all these end times prophecies are taking place. Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world, which are going on as we speak, then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days that were before thee, from these scriptures written in the past by the prophets who are back here today through the reincarnation, even from the beginning. For like as all that is made in the world hath a beginning and an end, and the end is manifest. And if you have the eyes to see, you can clearly see the end is manifesting. Famines, pestilences, racial tensions building up, World War III on the horizon, the mandatory implementation of the Mark of the Beast, which is the RFID/NFC microchip implant, and as we just read in verse 3, earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world. Here's an example of some of these earthquakes happening in diverse places over this past week. Signs of the times, earthquake swarms hit Texas, Oklahoma, San Francisco, and the new Madrid fault zone. Magnitude 5.6 earthquake hits off El Hierro, Canary Islands. Tremors felt in Tenerife, 250 miles away. Next magma intrusion begins. Magnitude 6.8 earthquake hits off Mal, Chile. And now for those uproars of the people in the world. This is a video from RT America titled Violent Protests Around the World. And what you're about to see is just an example of what's about to befall the United States of America. I'm sure a lot of you have been hearing about this upcoming recession, which has made it to the mainstream media, but know that it's not just going to be a recession, it's going to be a depression, and it's going to be the final and greatest depression, which is going to crash the U.S. economy and help usher in this new world order these elites want to bring about, which will be predicated upon the Mark of the Beast, again, that microchip implant.
With a story that's continuing to make headlines around the world, but at this point is hardly a blip on the media's radar screen here in the United States. While the mainstream media has lined its shows with the wall-to-wall coverage of President Trump and the threat of impeachment, there are massive protests breaking out worldwide that have, in many areas, turned deadly. That's Iraq, where at least 5 people have been killed in what protests that started in Baghdad and at this point have now spread throughout the entire country, with people at this point angry about unemployment and corruption and the abysmal public services being offered by the government. Hundreds of people have been injured in the protests that are being called the largest display of public outrage against Iraqi Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi's year-old government.
And at the latest count, it's 7 dead with 200 wounded. That's much worse than you think. Here's an article from ZeroHedge.com titled, At least 7 dead, embassies sealed off as Iraq protests rage, police open fire on crowds. Protests in the Iraqi capital of Baghdad, which began relatively peacefully on Tuesday, have spiraled out of control Wednesday and into other cities after witnessing a heavy-handed police response resulting in up to 7 reported deaths, according to data from Iraq's High Commission for Human Rights, cited also by the AFP. Though the initial protest origins remain obscure, the larger wave on Wednesday has been generally seen as fueled by anger over corruption, unemployment, and the lack of basic services. And when we go back to that video on RT America, you'll see that a common thread throughout all these protests is people being fed up with the government, which also goes into prophecies in the scriptures. Federal police have sought to clamp down on the increasingly violent demonstrations through rubber bullets, tear gas, and even the use of live ammunition. This prompted a statement from the U.S. Embassy in the country condemning the violence on both sides. At least 200 people were reported injured on Tuesday alone. I'm going to play a few clips in this article showing what's going on over there. While wounded by the riot police, this young Iraqi civil protester continued praying while live bullets were flying in the air nearby. Protesters at Al Jamhuriya Bridge in Baghdad aiming to reach the green zone while massive gunfires are heard. While massive gunfires are heard being shot by the security forces toward the sky. Don't for a second doubt that this isn't going to come to the U.S. and it's going to be worse once these uproars of the people really kick off over here, because instead of throwing rocks and Molotov cocktails, people are going to be throwing lead at each other. And you can clearly see that these Edomite, militia, and patriot groups are ready to go, as well as some of these left-leaning liberal Edomites. Not only are they ready to lock horns with each other, but with the government as well.
And in Haiti, the violence continues there as well. I believe that was Port-au-Prince. As protesters continue to clash with police, you're just seeing some of the images coming out of the capital city, where Haitians have been protesting the widespread fuel and food shortages throughout the island, a free-falling economy, high inflation, and corruption allegations against government officials, including the island's beleaguered president, Jovenel Moise. Well, last night on this program, Rick spoke with a UCLA professor who's an expert in Haiti about
protesting against government corruption as well as fuel and food shortage, also a part of scriptures.
Why the United States, and specifically the Clintons, have had a hand in pushing Haiti to this breaking point.
To think about Haiti in terms only of these specific crises, to actually completely ignore the continuous role over 200 years of U.S. imperialism in Haiti. What's happening now is a severe gas shortage that people are protesting against. They're protesting against this gas shortage because the president is trying to raise gas prices. But this also means the president is being forced to raise gas prices because the IMF is asking the president to get rid of subsidies.
Haiti to Peru, where thousands of protesters are demonstrating in the country's capital of Lima following President Martin Vizcarra's decision to dissolve Peru's Congress. That's right, to dissolve the entire Congress, prompting a fight for power and control of the country. Vizcarra has called for a new parliamentary election to be held within 4 months, but Peru's congressional president declared instead the temporary removal of Vizcarra, throwing the country into political chaos and uncertainty. And in Paris, the so-called Yellow Vest movement has now stretched into the 46th week, with large-scale protests by those angry about the country's high cost of living and rising fuel prices.
And remember, it's gotten so bad that some French police officers have actually committed suicide because they can't deal with the stress anymore. All coming to the United States of America.
We turn to Hong Kong, and this is a story that has been reported. And of course, the battle between protesters and police there, that also continues now into the 6th month. That's right, 6 months of this violence. A fight that has grown increasingly violent. In fact, police, and you may have heard about this, we've reported about this here on RT, police shot an 18-year-old protester in the chest, spurring anger and outrage, fueling the fire of public and political discontent. Thousands have been injured, with really no end on the horizon, a horizon that's been clouded in many parts of the city with smoke and tear gas. Hong Kong's police chief said the 70th anniversary of Communist Party rule in China was one of Hong Kong's most violent and chaotic days.
This whole world is a hair trigger away from going completely haywire. So now's not the time for you, Akim, to be getting weak in the faith. You should be fully assured in your faith in Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai and have all 10 toes down in this truth, pushing this word as hard as you possibly can to make your calling and election sure and be safe from these coming terrible calamities of Jacob's trouble. Let's get back into these scriptures. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 15. I'm going to start at verse 16. For there shall be sedition among men. And when we look up that word sedition, it means conduct or speech inciting people to rebel against the authority of a state or monarch. And as I said earlier, what was the through line between all those protests mentioned in that video? People were upset with their governments. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, these government officials, as well as law enforcement, which we clearly saw in that video on RT America, where some of those riot police were getting attacked by protesters. And the course of their actions shall stand in their power. A man shall desire to go into a city, and shall not be able, a state of martial law. And in some of these countries where protests are going on, the authorities have talked about instating martial law. And best believe that once this chaos touches down in the U.S., one of the first things they're going to do is instate martial law. The powers that be are itching for any reason to bring about martial law. That's why they've got all these laws on the books, such as the NDAA, or National Defense Authorization Act, which allows them to label a U.S. citizen a terrorist for a myriad of innocuous reasons, or indefinitely detain a U.S. citizen without trial. And you got a little taste of what martial law is going to be like during those Ferguson protests. You had riot police fully armored with MREPs and AR-15s just waiting to put that work to you so-called Negroes or Judites of the Southern Kingdom. And not only are there going to be armored riot police during martial law in the U.S., but they're going to be FEMA troops, NATO troops, and hired mercenaries patrolling these streets. For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword being that modern day gun, and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. And besides government corruption, what was another reason those people were protesting? A lack of food and fuel. And best believe some places in those countries were ransacked and their goods were spoiled. And again, it's going to be really bad once this touches down in the US because of all these guns on the street. You're going to see a economic collapse or a false flag bring about that state of martial law. You're going to have these trucks stop bringing food to the supermarkets, and those supermarkets are going to get ransacked in the first couple of days, which is going to get people really desperate since they can't get their medication or food. So they're going to start breaking into people's houses, spoiling their goods, and spoiling people as well. Your so-called best friend in the world is going to break into your house, kill you, take your goods, and if you have a pretty wife or daughter or even son, take them as well and spoil them, ravage them. So with this video, I hope you sincere Akim were edified. Just keep strong and keep pushing this word. We're almost out of this final captivity of the heathens, chiefly Esau Edom, the so-called white man. And as always, I'm going to say Abba Bal, Kwam Yasharala. Till next time, Shalom.